All right, thanks for coming, everybody. So we've kind of wanted to do this for a while. We've done one a couple of years ago, but we kind of thought it's about time to do another one. And we'll try to do these on a yearly basis just to kind of keep everybody up to date. We had a few questions kind of come in that Tom put this Google sheet out for. So I think I've covered everything, all the questions that we've had. So I'll run through the presentation, and then if you've got any questions that I've not covered, then you can either pop them in the chat and we can address them at the end of the presentation, or just, we'll have a little chat at the end, just kind of run through everything. So today, what I'll just run through is nutritional needs for daily living and training. I'll look at some of the requirements for racing, and then also just look at recovery. You know, nutrition is a really big topic, so there's probably some areas we're not really covering, like things like supplementation. I touched on it a little bit, but again, if there's anything that we're missing, just kind of ask that question at the end. So I think for me and maybe a lot of other coaches, we feel that nutrition is that forgotten element. You know, everybody's really conscious about swim, bike, run transitions, but nutrition's, you know, is one of those areas that if you get that wrong, then it doesn't matter how much training you've done, your race is not going to go very well, or your training is not going to go very well. So if you get your nutrition right, obviously you'll be better, more effective training. That it will then lead to recovery, more time to train, and then hopefully will lead to better performance overall. And you might have seen these graphics before that, you know, you wouldn't not put fuel in your car. And that's exactly what it is with us. You know, you think of yourself, your body as that engine, and you've just got to fuel it properly to be able to do everyday, day-to-day activities, and also training and racing as well. So a few of the key areas where if you get your balanced diet right, it can, you know, prevent injury and illness. A lot of injuries and illness come from poor nutrition, not enough calories, not enough carbohydrates, things like that. So getting that right is really key to prevent injury and illness. Competition as well. So obviously, the more energy you have, the faster you can go, or the more you can utilize the training that you've done, so your body can perform to its maximum potential. And also looking at training adaptation. So, you know, how can you get the best results from your training? How can you stimulate that muscle growth? How can you make sure that your energy stores are topped up so that you're ready to train again that next day? So we'll kind of just cover all those areas, and having a balanced diet is one of the best ways to kind of help with all those. So this is just a little graphic on, you know, what are you running on? So what is it when we talk about nutrition? So hopefully you've all heard of carbohydrates, fat and protein. So all of these are energy sources. How much energy do they give you varies between each one. So fat, you know, it gives you 9 calories per gram of fat. The problem is with fat, it takes a lot of energy to kind of get that energy out of it. And it's a lot of a slower process. Whereas carbohydrates, you don't get as much energy from them, but you can utilize them quicker and you can produce it quicker. Protein, we get a slight amount of energy from protein. Ideally, we don't really want to be breaking protein down, because what that generally means is we're generally breaking things down like muscle to get that protein. But as long as you've got that balanced diet within there, then those muscle stores shouldn't reduce. And alcohol, we do get energy from alcohol, but obviously don't really want to use that on race day. So this is just a nice graph, just looking at what fuel do we use during rest and also training. So on the left, we've got a percent contribution. And then on the bottom, you can see that we've got the different types of exercise. We've got yellow is the protein, green is your carbohydrate, so your glucose and your glycogen, and then the orange is your fats. So you can see when we're just resting, we get predominantly our fuel is coming from fat. So 60% is coming from fat just as we're resting, 35 from carbohydrate, and then a little bit from protein. You can see all the way throughout that protein is very minimal throughout the exercise. So light to moderate exercise, I'd probably say that's walking, really, really kind of zone 1 training. Again, you've got that fat is predominant, but you're getting obviously more carbohydrate within there, so nearly getting 50-50. Then as you move into more higher intensity exercise, the contribution from carbohydrate is a lot more. So you're looking at 95% with your high sprint type exercise and your high intensity endurance exercise. So you could say that's kind of your kind of tempo threshold, kind of race pace, probably up to Olympic distance race pace. You 70% of your fuel is coming from carbohydrates. So it's really important that you've got enough fuel in your body and the right fuel for the activity that you're doing. So just to run through what are carbohydrates, fats and proteins. So as I said, it's one of the main carbohydrates. So I've just put in brackets, that's what you'll see it throughout the presentations. The CHO is just the abbreviation for carbohydrates. So it's one of the main fuel used by the body. This is the one that's depleted during exercise. So generally when you start to fatigue, so at the end of a long Sunday ride, you start to slow down. It's generally because you've reduced your carbohydrate stores. You need carb-rich food in your diet. This is to fill your glycogen stores. So carbohydrates are stored within the muscle and liver as glycogen. And then we use that glycogen as glucose when we start exercising and moving around. So we really need to make sure that these stores are filled up so that when you go to do your daily activities or do your exercise, that you can utilize those stores and you're not depleted. Generally per day, this is for someone not training, we're looking for about 5 grams per kilogram of carbohydrate per day. So 5 grams per kilogram of body weight carbohydrate per day. So it does amount to quite a bit, and this constitutes 45 to 50% of your total calories per day. And just with the images, you can kind of see, you know, good carbohydrates that are in there, kind of your wholemeal kind of toast, bagels, your pastas, your rices, also fruit and veg as well. We'll give you that. The protein. So protein can aid with muscle recovery, both in resistance and endurance exercise. I think probably over the past couple of years, there's been a big push to having more of a higher protein diet. How much you have depends on kind of what training you're doing. And I'll touch on a little bit later kind of how much you should be getting based on for endurance athletes. So you're looking at anywhere between 1 to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. Again, that varies as to whether you're doing endurance exercise or whether you're kind of more strength-based, more wanting to lay down protein. So if you were doing more strength, you'd be at the top end of that, so more 2 grams. And kind of endurance is probably about 1 to 1.5 grams. And this constitutes around about 20 to 35% of your total calories a day. And again, there's loads of options out there to get some protein in. You know, I think a lot of people think protein needs to come from a shake, which it can do, and that is really convenient. But it's really good to get it through in the diet as well, because not only you get everything else with it, your fibre, your minerals, and vitamins as well. So really kind of condone having everything in the diet as much as possible. There's also loads of vegan and vegetarian options as well with protein, and there's just a few examples on there. So fats, so we need fats. I think some people think that we should have a really low fat diet, but fats are really important, particularly the mono and polyunsaturated fats are kind of your good fats. These can support your immunity, fight inflammation, and it's just really important to get it in through the day. And we're looking at about 0.5 to 1 grams per kilogram of body weight per day, and this is about 20 to 35% of your calorie intake. And by good fats, you can see there, nuts are a really good source. Things like olive oil, avocados, oily fish as well is really, really good to get in your diet to kind of get those really good fats into your system. Veg and fruit. So these, as I've said, they provide everything really. So carbohydrate, protein, fats, and you also get water. So kind of your hydration is not just from what you're drinking in your water bottle, but it's also what you have in your food as well. So how much water's in there, that contributes to what you should be getting in a day. So I said good vitamins and minerals. So these are your electrolytes, good source of fibre. They really help antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, so it's really good to get these in a day. I've said 5 to 10 portions. That can vary depending on what you read in the literature, but as long as you're getting a variety of fruit and veg a day in your diet, balanced with your carbohydrate, protein and fat, then you're kind of putting yourself in a good stead. So just looking at, this is kind of quite basic, but I think it's just really easy to follow. So this is looking at an optimal plate of food, and generally you just follow that rule of thirds. So you've got a third carbohydrate, a third protein, and a third fruit, veg and good fats, and there's just some examples there. what's kind of coming out a lot more kind of in the literature is that we can periodize our nutrition. So when you're training, how does your nutrition look when you've got a heavy load day, for example, like Sunday bike ride and maybe a brick, as opposed to, say, a nice endurance swim, which is really low intensity. So where you can start off, this is a good starting point, is to have a rule of thirds, but we can go a little bit deeper into that and then look at just maybe periodizing our plate of food or our nutrition through the day based on the exercise that we're doing. So there's just some examples here for you, and obviously we're recording this and I can send this out to you as well, so you've got all these graphics to kind of follow from. So if you're doing a light training day, you're probably going to have half fruit and veg, quarter protein and a quarter carbs. And if you're on weight management, there's arguments to say that you could lower those carbs as well, but generally looking at more fruit and veg, a bit less carbs, and making sure you get your protein in. And the protein's kind of the same all the way throughout, depending whatever training you're doing. So a moderate training day, so I've kind of said this, if you're doing intervals on Tuesday, so you just got one session in the day, but it's a fairly hard session. What you want to look at then is kind of upping the carbohydrate intake that you're taking on board, and just reducing that veg and fruit a little bit. So you're going to have more kind of your toast, your breads, your rice, things like that, just to make sure that you've upping the carbohydrates so that you've got that fuel to use when you're doing that bit more of a heavier session. And then a high volume training day. So this could be, for example, I've put there a long bike ride and a brick session. It could just be a long bike ride as well, depending on how long that is. Or if you're doing 2 training sessions in a day, things like that. That's where you really want to make sure that you're getting the carbohydrate in to fuel all the training sessions that you're doing. So again, you're looking at maybe half your plate is carbohydrate, and then you've got some protein and veg and fruit in there as well. So that's how you can kind of take that rule of thirds and kind of just make it a little bit more tailored to what you're doing in your training throughout the week. So we have some questions about kind of example dishes. So just kind of put a few things on there. So it's really about thinking, getting some, some lean protein in there. If you are a meat eater, so things like your white chicken, your salmon, fish, things like that, making sure that you've got some veggies in there, so make it as colourful as possible, I suppose. And when you're having things like rice, look at options like your brown rice, just because it's going to give you that bit more fibre as well, and it's just a little bit harder to kind of break down. Breakfast, things like granola, yogurt, berries are really good, eggs, avocado, toast, there you're getting your protein, you're getting your good fats from your avocado, and you've got some carbohydrate there with your toast as well. So it's really just about making sure you've got a nice colourful plate and you're covering your carbohydrate, fat and your protein. But we can kind of it might be quite nice, maybe we could have like a recipe, TFN recipe page or something, I don't know, to kind of like share ideas would be quite nice. Because I know you kind of get into a rut. I know I definitely do with what to eat. So it's quite nice to have some different ideas from what people are having. And also from people who are vegetarian and who are vegan as well, because you might have some options that people might not have thought of, I suppose. Okay, so this was on a nutrition talk that someone else gave, and I just thought it was really quite interesting. So just looking at the nutrient content, because we can get a lot of kind of juice-based products, but it's always better to go for the original format of it, I suppose. So having a whole apple, you're going to get much more nutrients from that, because you've got your fibre in there as well, than you are going to get from, say, having apple juice, which you're still going to get better than your apple juice from concentrate. So it's just thinking about your choices, I suppose, where, if you've only got apple juice from concentrate, that's all you've got access to, but maybe go looking for a pure apple juice, or actually just having an apple itself. And I think an apple itself is cheaper anyway, so I'd probably always go for that option. Okay, so I've just put in a little bit about hydration. So the recommended, what they say is 2 litres of water per day, but this can obviously vary based on how much training you're doing, what you're eating, things like tea and coffee, that all kind of adds up to your fluid intake. The temperature that you're in and the temperature that you're training in, obviously all these can have an effect. And some people say kind of drink to thirst. And I suppose, you know, if you're not training, then that's probably a good way to go. And also, you know, a really simple thing is just looking at your urine. So when you go to the loo, just, you know, looking, is it nice, light, pale, or is it really dark? And I think that's probably the best gauge that we've all got to know whether we need to be taking on more water or not. If you want to get a bit more kind of sciencey into it with your training, you can do some sweat rate calculations. And I've just put a little link in there so that you can have a look into a bit more detail. And it is quite simple. It's basically, you know, go to the toilet, weigh yourself before you train, weigh yourself after you train, make sure you weigh much fluid you're taking in, and then you can then calculate how much hydration you need to be taking on. And there's a really nice calculator on that link as well. So if you did want to go into it, and it just gives a little bit more detail of kind of how much sodium you're potentially losing and kind of what you need to replace as well. So if you're doing, you know, if it's quite high temperatures that you're kind of racing or training in, then that might be something that you might want to think about, just maybe doing that calculation, because everybody sweats at different rates. So it's just making your hydration a bit more specific to you, I suppose.
Yeah, I'd say as well, Joe, that it's something maybe you could, if you know you're going to a hotter environment, or maybe do that a few times because the weather will be different, and just take a note of what the temperature was that day. So if you got your long bike ride and it was 9 degrees and I lost 1.5 litres, great. But if it's 18, I might lose a lot more, or 24, I might lose a lot more. So it's maybe something you can just do on your long rides. Just take a little note before you go out the door, and take a little note when you come back, and take a note of the temperature. And then you'll have a good idea when it comes to your key race of what your fluid intake might or could be.
Okay, so that's kind of general nutrition that I'm going to touch on. So now we're going to talk a bit more about training. And training also links into racing as well, but I have got a little bit on racing as also, so I'll get to that in a moment. So when you're looking at pre-training, so if you've got morning training, so for example, if you're getting up early for Wednesday morning swim, if you have kind of on Tuesday night, you've done intervals, you can have a high carbohydrate meal to refuel. So if you've had that, then and you're fueled well, you've got in your stores about 60 to 90 minutes worth of fuel for an easy to moderate session. So it may be that you're all right going to Wednesday morning swim without necessarily having to have anything to eat. Because I know a lot of people do struggle with early morning training and eating. For me, I always feel I need something, even if it's just, say, a cup of tea. But it depends on what your body responds to and what you can eat. But just to bear in mind that you do have enough energy within your stores to do that light session. If you've had, say, a lower carbohydrate meal and a higher protein meal the night before, that's where you might need that. Well, you will need that carbohydrate before training, and it's about topping up those energy stores. And it's about thinking about having, like I've written there, so a banana, flapjack, or a bit of cereal before swim training, or a nice light, easy run. Again, it depends on whether you can take food on, because nobody wants to get up 3 hours before a 6 a.m. swim, isn't really to fuel. Sunday rides, that's where you might need to have a bit more fuel within you. And look at things like having porridge, having bagel and jam. So really quite high carbohydrate foods to make sure that you're fueled for the training that you're going to be doing. If you've got afternoon or evening training, so it's important to make sure the meals throughout the day have been balanced. So, for example, if I know I've got a hard session in the evening and I've done a swim in the morning, I'm going to have a lot of carbohydrate through the day. Again, if I've just got, I've got a light day, or maybe just doing a bit of strength, then I might not have as many carbohydrates, but I'll have a bit more protein. So it's just balancing that up for what you're doing. And also make sure if I've got intervals or a hard bike ride, I'll have some carbohydrate snack 1 to 2 hours before. So it's things like, a bit of malt loaf, a bit of toast, a banana, a bit of cereal, just something just to get that carbohydrate in. So even before like Monday swim, I'll come home and I'll have a bowl of cereal and then go to swim. So I just know that I'm fueled for that session. So during training then, so I think I do think a lot of people think they don't have to fuel during training. But training is just like racing. You know, you're exercising, you're moving your body, you need to fuel your body as well. So it's really important to take it in during training. So as I said before, so anything under 90 minutes, if you've had a good meal the night before, or you had a good breakfast, then you've got about 90 minutes of fuel within you. So anything under 90 minutes, then you don't necessarily have to take any more on board. That's making sure that you've had that fueling through the day. So if you just have breakfast and nothing else through the day, and you do a session in the evening, you've not got enough to fuel on. But if you have breakfast, lunch, and a mid-afternoon snack, then you probably are right to have enough to fuel on in the evening. Anything from 90 minutes to 3 hours, this is where you need to take carbohydrates on board, because you will have depleted the stores that you can keep in your body, in your muscles and your liver. So you need to make sure that they're topped up. And we aim for between 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour when you're exercising, and about a litre of fluids per hour. And I generally start to take this on board after about 60 minutes of exercise. So where we might have 90 minutes of stores, don't get to the point where you're fully depleted before taking it on board. Make sure you start taking it on before you need it, essentially. So some examples of what 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate looks like. So this can be your energy drink, so 500 mils. So you need to make sure you're getting through 1 bottle an hour. Gels have between 20 to 30 grams of carbohydrate. So you need to be taking on 2 to 3 gels per hour. If they are, like in the picture there, just a pure energy gel, you need to make sure you take these with water. So a gel and then have a swig of water. The isogels that High Five do, you don't need to take water on with those, because they are more dilute. So you can just take the gel as is. And I think they're quite good when you're running, because then you don't need to carry your water as well. Energy bars, so if you're having these, they're about 30 to 40 grams of carbohydrates. So you need to make sure you have 1 bar of those. And also you can take on solid foods like your flapjacks, malt loaf, banana, things like that. But it's just making sure that you've got as a minimum 30 grams of carbohydrate. So I think that's probably a lot more than people probably take at the moment, and probably think that they need to take. So they're quite interested when we chat later to kind of get everybody's idea on what they do actually have, say on a bike ride. So 3 hours plus. So again, it's similar to above, but you can potentially take on a little bit more. So 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrate. Again, 1 litre per hour of fluids. And you can generally, because this is the point when you're going to start to get hungry. So, you know, you can eat more solid foods. As I've said, bananas, flapjacks, tea cake, malt loaf. People have sandwiches. Whatever you really want to have, you know, whatever you can stomach, I suppose, as well. Because if you're taking carbohydrate on for that long, it can get to the point where, you know, your sugary sweetness is just really sickly. So you actually want some food. So it's about playing around with what works for you, I suppose. And if you do this in training, it will really inform you what you can take on in racing as well. And it can also get your body used to taking on this amount of carbohydrate. So I know some people do struggle quite a bit trying to take carbs, and some people say I can't actually have gels, but you can train your body to tolerate the gels, but you've got to do that within training. So it's really important to get it on board. So just put a little bit in just about the type of carbohydrate, because people might think, oh, I can just make my own sugary drink, just with some sugar and a bit of cordial or something, and that'll suffice. But there is different types of carbohydrate, and the rate at which you can absorb these can vary. So you can see from this graph, we've got on the y-axis, we've got how much is absorbed essentially, and then we've got time in minutes across the x-axis, across the bottom. So you can see we've got fructose. So fructose is things like fruit is quite high in fructose. You've got glucose. So and again, that's anything just like a sugar drink. And then we've also got glucose and fructose. Okay, so we're looking at them on their own, and you can see that if you take a glucose and a fructose drink, you're going to have, as it says there, 55% improved carbohydrate absorption from your drink. So your 500 ml bottle of energy drink, you're going to be able to absorb a lot more of that than you are if you just got a pure kind of fructose or glucose drink. The beauty now is if you're having energy drinks, they are all glucose and fructose based. So you're getting that improved, should be getting that improved absorption from those energy drinks. And it's just thinking about if you're not having an energy drink and looking at the food you're taking in, have you got that mix of glucose and fructose essentially? You're still going to get carbs, and if you just had fructose or glucose, but you get a better bang for buck if you can kind of have them both together. Okay, so post-training. So post-training really is just about replenishing those stores. So if you've done a long Sunday bike ride, you want to make sure that you're getting carbohydrate back in your body, so you're then ready to then get to Monday swim as refreshed as possible. And it's really important if you've got 2 training sessions in a day, that you make sure that you're fueling post-training so that you're then ready to train later on in the day. So you're really going to get the benefit out of both sessions, not just the one you've done where you're fully fueled. I've just put in this graph here. So this is a study where they had people cycling at 70% of VO2 max. That's kind of equivalent to your kind of Sunday ride, nice social Sunday ride effort for about 70 minutes. What they did then is they gave a sports drink immediately after exercise or 2 hours after exercise. And what we can see on the graph is what it's showing is how much muscle glycogen is resynthesized, so how much of your energy stores are kind of refueled up in essence. So we can see the blue is immediately after when they had the carbohydrate drink, and the red is when they took it 2 hours later. And you can see after 2 hours, but the rate that energy is restored back in the muscle is a lot lower when you have it 2 hours later than if you have it straight after training. So it's really important that if you get back off your ride, that you can put your bike away, you're clean if you need be, and then get in and just get some fueling you. So getting things like eggs on toast or whatever it is that you like to have after your Sunday ride, as long as you've got that carbohydrate in there, just really thinking about getting that in sooner rather than later. Otherwise, you're going to reduce the amount that your energy stores that you've repleted, and then your next training session, your stores aren't going to be as high as they could be, essentially. And then you've got less carbohydrate to train with, and then potentially you're going to fatigue quicker throughout your training. So this is just looking at protein. So it's probably, this was 2002 where they're actually looking at giving carbohydrate and protein after training. But I think maybe for a lot of us as training and coaching, it's probably coming, in the past couple of years, that it's probably more important to get some protein in for endurance athletes. I think everybody knows with strength training, that's what you need to get in. You need to get your protein in, get your protein shake after you do need to exercise. But it's really important now for endurance athletes to get some protein in. And again, similar to kind of strength training, is we want to repair any muscle damage that we've got during exercise. And it's also been shown that it can increase that glycogen, that carbohydrate storage in your muscle. So it's making you more energy within your muscles to then train in your next session. And then we're aiming for about 30 to 40 grams of protein post-exercise. So just to kind of show you the data, as opposed to me just saying to you, this study here by Ivy. So what they did 2.5 hours of intense cycling, and they supplemented 10 minutes after exercise. And they looked at 3 different supplements. So the black bar, they looked at giving carbohydrate and protein. They're quite high, 80 grams of carbohydrates are quite high, and then 28 grams of protein. The grey bar, they just had a high carbohydrate drink supplement, 108 grams of carbohydrate. And then the white bar is a low carbohydrate drink, so 80 grams of carbohydrate and no protein. And we can see what that's measuring is how much glycogen is stored within the muscle. So how much carbohydrate can they get back into their muscle 4 hours after supplementation. And we can see that if you've got that 30 grams of protein within after training with your carbohydrate, you get much greater storage of that fuel within your muscles. So then that just means that you're then more ready to train or to race 4 hours later, essentially. So again, it's just making sure you get your carbohydrate in and just getting that bit of protein in as well. And I know for me, I like to have like eggs on toast when I get back, or eggs, beans and toast, because you've got your carbohydrate and you got your protein there as well. So just looking at things like that, really. So that's training. So when we're looking at pre-competition nutrition, so it's generally the same essentially, but you're just thinking a few days out from your race a little bit more about what you're taking in. So 4 to 5 days, you know, make sure that you've got some, it's real good quality food that you're taking in. Make sure you're getting plenty of fruit and veg, getting those nutrients in. Then as we get closer to the race, this is where we need to think about getting more carbohydrate in and really making sure that all those energy stores that we've got in the body are really topped up. And also what you can think about, the carbohydrate you take in are like really kind of simple things. So things like white bread, white pasta, white rice, just because you want to reduce that amount of fiber that you're having in your diet as well, because then that can then contribute to any stomach and gut issues that you could potentially have. So really just really simple carbohydrates. And what it is we're thinking about is, yeah, fueling the liver, fueling our muscles, and making sure that we're fully hydrated before we go into the race. So this was just quite a good thing that somebody put out, was, you know, what does it actually look like? So a high carbohydrate diet, as I said, pre-race, is between 6 to 8 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight. So you're looking at a 70 kilogram athlete that's trying to get in 420 to 500 grams of carbohydrate per day, essentially. And this is what it looks like. So you look at this and you go, wow, that's a lot of food. But that's how much you need to be getting in to make sure that you've got enough carbohydrates. And it's about having you know, breakfast, lunch and tea, but having the snacks in between and having those pre-sleep snacks as well. And it's real kind of simple stuff that you're getting in, like your potatoes, you know, bagels, things like that, chicken and fajitas. So just making sure that you've got all those nutrients in, and you can work out what you need based on obviously your body weight, what you need to be getting in those 24 to 36 hours pre-race, just to make sure that you're fully fueled. And what I'd say is make sure you've kind of tested this. So don't just do this before your first race or your big A race. This is something that you can practice in. You know, you can practice up to a big weekend block of training, just to make sure that the foods that you're thinking of having, you can tolerate, and that you can race having those as well, essentially. So nothing new on race day or the lead up to race day. So pre-race meal. So yeah, aim to have this 3 to 4 hours before. Again, everybody's different. Some people need 3-4 hours. You know, some people can have a lot less than that. But again, it's about you knowing your body and you know, and how long you need to leave it before you need to start your race. Again, keep plugging this, but it's carbohydrate, a little bit of protein, and then really low in fat. So that's what you need to be getting in. I have 2 bagels with jam just to make sure I get in. You know, a bagel is a really dense carbohydrate as opposed to having toast. I think it's about 70 grams of carbohydrate per bagel. So it's really quite a lot. Just get on that, how much? So 2 to 2.5 grams per kilogram of body weight of carbohydrate. And then a little bit of protein, so 20 grams of protein. As I said, minimize your fat and your fiber intake. So things that are easy to digest. If you lower that fiber intake, it's a lot easier to digest. And as I said before, make sure your foods are familiar. So you've tried this before, and not just doing it on your first race. And then hydration, you know, aim to drink about 300 to 600 mils of water before. So what's not in this, I mean, what a lot of people do, it might be on my next slide, is just before they do the swim, they'll look at taking a gel. And if you've had a breakfast and you're fueled well there, that gel probably isn't really needed. You know, you've got enough energy stores to get you through, you know, 60 to 90 minutes. I think I personally take it just because it's like a bit of a ritual. Oh, I need to have my gel, and other people do it, so I probably do it. But you know, technically, you should have enough in your body to get you through that swim.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're at a race and there's a lot of walking around, and if you go to a big one of the big ones, you've got to the car park, you've walked from the car park, you've sorted your bike out, you've walked down to swim start, you've registered. So sometimes you may have depleted yourself a little bit. So that's where this kind of pre-race gel comes in quite useful.
So as we've mentioned during training, you're looking to consume between 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate. And obviously that's where you're going to get that in on the bike. And depending what length of race you're doing as to whether you fuel on the run as well. But I've got a little kind of takeaway graphic for you all, looking at how much you should be taking on based on the distance of your race. And again, you know, on the bike, this is about not having anything new. I know I really like to have just energy drink and gels, because that's just easy. One thing that I do, and I have this in training as well, so on my Wahoo, it beeps at me every 20 minutes and it says eat. I've got that there to eat. And I've practiced with that, and I'm getting to the point where I'm actually having a drink before it beeps. So I'm getting used to, you know, how often I need to be drinking and fueling. And I think having an energy drink is good because you're getting your hydration and you're getting your carbs in. But again, it's whether you can tolerate that. So everybody has to try it, and try everything in training first. So this is what I was on about. So I won't go through this now, but this is kind of a take home for you. What you need to be looking at depending on what distance race you're doing, because obviously the longer you go, the more fuel you're going to need. And when you read through that, you'll probably look at it and go, oh my God, I need to take 2 to 3 gels per hour. It sounds a lot, but trust me, that is what you need to make sure you've got enough fuel for that race that you're doing. So it's really super important that you get it enough in, and also you've trialed this beforehand as well. So you can give yourself maybe some mini kind of training days where you're going to make sure that you're practicing everything like you would practice going out in a new tri suit, hopefully, a new kit. You need to be doing this with your nutrition as well. So that's kind of your general kind of carbohydrate, what you need to be getting in. Just a few things on, one supplement, I suppose. So caffeine. So caffeine has been shown to have a major effect on performance. And it used to be that, they used to say that you need to stop caffeine a couple of weeks before, so kind of get it out your system, and then have caffeine on race day, and you perform a lot better. But now it's shown that actually, if you just have your normal caffeine like you would day to day, you can still supplement with it and still see those performance benefits, which is great, because once you stop taking caffeine, you can feel like crap basically if you're kind of quite used to having caffeine. So this is just a nice little study where they looked at like placebo, so no caffeine, decaf coffee, an actual coffee or caffeine itself. And they did 30 minutes of steady cycling, then they did a time trial. And basically it shows that coffee and caffeine have similar effects. So there's caffeine supplements you can have, but coffee's kind of just as good. And you can get 5% quicker if you have caffeine than if you don't. So for example, I would say if you're in a long race and you normally have a couple of cups of coffee in a day, you want to make sure you're kind of still getting that caffeine, because by not having it, that can really affect you. So you can get things like your gels can have caffeine in, or some of your energy drink can have caffeine in. So it's just about making sure that you're having that as well as getting your carbohydrate in as well. And it's super important with this, definitely, to practice having it. Some of the gels can be quite high in caffeine. And if you're not used to having them, you can start to feel really jittery. So it is just about, again, practicing everything in training. Okay, so electrolytes. So I had a question about electrolytes. And I don't know how many people take electrolytes, but I feel there's been a big explosion that everybody should be having electrolytes. So what are electrolytes? So literally there's sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. They can control fluid balance. They're shown to regulate blood pressure. They can help with your muscle contraction and maintain correct acidity of your blood. Now, water still does contain a small amount of electrolytes, and if you are having that balanced diet and you're having your fruit and veg, you should be getting enough electrolytes within the day. Where it may change and where you may need to think of supplementing is if you're exercising more than an hour, if you're exercising somewhere where it's quite hot and your sweat rate is quite high, so you're actually losing those electrolytes through the sweat, that's when you might need to think about supplementing. But if you look at a lot of the carbohydrate drinks anyway, which if you're training and you're racing, you should be thinking about having, they do have electrolytes in them. If, say, for example, you're racing or training in a hot country and you prefer to eat food, or you don't have that energy drink with the electrolytes in, it could be that you pop a few tabs in your water, and then that's going to make sure that you get the electrolytes in there. So it's just thinking about what you're doing. Are you sweating more, and do you need to supplement with it? I know some people would just have them in their water bottle every day, but I don't believe that necessarily you need that. But again, if you feel good having one of those, then that's absolutely fine. You go ahead and take them, but definitely think about supplementing when you are training, especially when it's in a hotter climate, I'd say. So I know that's probably a quick snapshot of everything, and if I bamboozled you, hopefully I haven't. And you've also got this presentation to kind of take away and to look back on the video as well. But some of my kind of take-home points of this is, kind of eat real food where you can. Supplements are great. I think supplements are really good, obviously, for training. But where you can, when you're getting home after training, try eat those real foods. Because you get much more, you're getting your vitamins and minerals and your water from that as well, as opposed to your supplement where you might not be getting all those extra benefits. As I said, if you just want the real basic, you don't want to think about too much. I just want to make sure I'm getting everything in. Think of that balanced diet into your plate of thirds. That's a really good starting point to go with. And then if you want to get a little bit more tailored in your nutrition, you can then just think about that periodized nutrition based on what your training needs are. Really make sure you're looking at your nutrition pre and post training, and also making sure that you're getting adequate during training as well. And then making sure that you're getting that within your race. It's very easy. It's easy, if you like, just on a Sunday, right, to forget to eat and drink, and even more so when you're racing. So thinking about those little prompts, with your bike computer, or on your Garmin, on your wristwatch, when you think about when you're running and things like that, you can have those little prompts, because it is really easy to forget. And if you miss that intake of carbohydrate, then there's a chance that you're going to become depleted, and then you're not going to be able to perform to your best potential, essentially, because we put so much time, effort and money into training that we really just want to make sure that we can utilize all that training and have a really good race, essentially. So I've just put on there some references for the papers that I've kind of referred to, so if you want to delve in a little bit deep, you can. If you can't get access to them, just let me know, because then I should be able to get them from work, so that's fine. And then I suppose just if you want any, going forwards, any further support, race plans, nutrition, anything, there's obviously me and Tom, and our contact details are on there, or you can just kind of message us. I'll get us at training, I suppose. So, okie doke. So I suppose it's over to you guys. So, is there anybody got any questions, or is there anything you think that I've kind of not covered that you'd like to know about? Have I done my job really well?
It's just kind of one point.
You're all doing other jobs.
There's one point I'd like to reinforce. I mean, when Joe says, practice your plan before race day, it's often your favorite nutrition is probably not on the race course. So if you always use SIS, or you always use Talk, or you always use High Five, the race organizer is probably not using that. So it's well worth finding out what they're using if you intend to pick up, which you may not do. And making sure that you can tolerate or you like the stuff that they're going to put on the race course, because people have had real bad gastric problems with taking on a sports drink they've picked up from an aid station, and they just don't like it. So find out early as you can, and practice with that product if you intend to pick it up, which you might not. In a shorter race, you can carry it all on yourself. Okay, and Becky's got a question out, Joe, in chat.
Let me see.
So I've heard that protein is less important after swimming than it is after other exercise. Is that true?
I think it's important after all types of exercise. Obviously, it's dependent on intensity. So maybe the more intense the session is, the more chance that you might have that muscle breakdowns where you need to then make sure you're getting your protein in. But again, if you're looking at that balanced diet anyway, I'd say definitely get it in after every type of exercise.
It's probably something to do with less impact in swimming, but other than that,
Probably.
it's the same. This is the same issue really. But so maybe less muscle damage from than if you going to do a long hard run, but it's still important to get it in. Some people post exercise have a lot of issue getting in food. There's a I don't know what the term is, Joe will know, but some people come back and their appetite is completely satiated from exercise and they just don't want to eat. And that's maybe where, try and eat real food. That's always the best thing, as Joe's talked about. But maybe that's the point where supplementation with protein powders and may be more useful. It may be more palatable and it may be easier to get down. If you come back and you're hot and sweaty and just don't want to eat, then that's where those products are probably the most useful.
Yeah, definitely. And I know sometimes, getting enough protein in, protein can be expensive, can't it? And trying to think of different things to have is difficult. So I do turn to a protein shake, and I make it with milk. So I've got a protein, I've got different types of protein in there. And yeah, you just increasing the amount that you've got in it, I suppose. I'm not all against supplements.
For sure, yeah. But,
Hannah. Can't hear you, Hannah.
Oh, sorry, thanks. I'm just trying to multitask as well as listening. I just wondered if there's different times in life when you need to change the amount of protein that you have, thinking female athletes as they get older, and how would that look instead of the thirds on the plate?
Yeah, definitely. So as we get older, we do need more protein. So it's harder. Well, should I say, we start to lose protein, we start to lose muscle as we get older. It's just inevitable. So we kind of want to reduce that loss as much as possible. So there is, definitely research to say that instead of 30 grams, you need to get more, your 40 to 50 grams in. So you do need to up that. So it would be about making sure that you've got that greater portion of protein on your plate than say looking at the rule of thirds. So just upping that. So yeah, it's quite interesting how people really don't get enough in and probably don't really understand how much is enough. Because I think the general the recommendations that are put out there are kind of like 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram body weight. That's really low. And the stuff we do, the studies that we do, that is really low. And just for kind of your day-to-day living, I think you definitely need a bit more than that. And then you put on top exercise as well. That then boost what you need, so more that 1.5 grams per kilogram in somebody who's endurance training. You could probably up that a little bit more for once we get older as well.
Anecdotally, I've trained quite a few people in that position, perimenopausal and menopausal women now, and we've upped their protein intake, and it has made a difference to their general quality of life overall, and how those symptoms affect them. They're just better able to deal with everything else that's going on at the same time. So it's worth trying to push it a bit. You don't have to be a bodybuilder level, but just push it up a bit.
Okay, thanks very much.
Right. My volunteer the other day, I asked him what he had for lunch. I'm looking at people over 65, and I said, "Oh, what do you have for lunch?" And he went, "A slice of toast and jam." I went, "What?" Like, that's all you're having for lunch? He was like, "Yeah, is that not normal?" So people just don't really understand. I think it's
the
really
messaging.
to get across.
It's changed a lot. This stuff now. There's studies coming out right at the moment which says there's not really an upper limit to protein resynthesis. So you take protein and then the body takes it and shoves it back into the muscles. It's just dependent on, as Joe's talked about, it's dependent on what activity you're doing. Do you need it? It's like as you do exercise, imagine you're taking bricks out of a wall, and then the body goes along and tries to put those bricks back in. So the more bricks you take out, the more you need to put back in again. So the more training you do, the longer training you do, the harder training you do, the more you need to shove those bricks back in. It does make a big difference.
That's a nice analogy.
I stole that from, I forget who it was. And then particularly if you start introducing strength training, which again, I think everyone should do, but particularly women as well, and women in perimenopausal and menopausal women, strength training makes a massive difference. And again, you need more protein for that because you're putting more stress or more load on the system. Yeah, great question.
Yeah, good. Any more? Oh, we've got two raised hands.
Let's go for June.
Junie.
Thanks. I got my poll up. Just a quick question, slightly generic, I suppose. So we appreciate your thoughts. I guess, with training and all that, obviously feeling is very important. But I'm just wondering what your thoughts are of trying to be, I guess losing weight is probably not the right word, but trying to be leaner, but also training at the same time. Is it something that's advisable? Is it something that might result in me losing more muscle mass? Or should I just stick with, nutrition and training and not try to lose too much weight, if that makes sense? I guess coming from the perspective of, if I lost a few kilos, then my watts per kilo will improve because the denominator changes, So just would appreciate your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think, you can actively lose weight and still put muscle on. So I think that is probably thought that couldn't happen. So if you're thinking that you do want to lose a bit of weight but still keep your muscle mass there, it is about making sure that you've got adequate protein and having that in your diet. So not just reducing calories from everything. So it could be that, again, that periodized nutrition might be a little bit better for you, so you can reduce the carbohydrate a bit, but then just up that protein is what I would say. And generally you generally find, if you're starting to lose weight and you don't want to, then obviously that's where you need to up that calorie intake, and vice versa. If you're putting that weight on, it might be that you're just actually having too much more. But I'd say if you want to lose weight and then keep muscle, then you just need to look at that protein aspect of it, just making sure that that's adequate.
Yeah, and also just be very cautious with the rate of weight loss that you're going to do, and have a really good look at what you're eating now. Use a tool like MyFitnessPal, have a look at it, and make sure, as Joe says, make sure you keep the protein up. And maybe start off with only going down 5%, and just see what happens. And if your weight doesn't come down, to take another 5% off those calories, and take a longer look at it over a week, not necessarily just over a day. We're generally taught now. When I did my recent course, we talked more about steering people towards better nutrition, better food, better volume of better food. Makes you feel, rather than just trying to cut calories and maybe still eating junk. I'm not saying that you are, but eat better food. And when we try and eat leaner protein and better food, calories tend to come down anyway because we're more satiated. And it's quite a nice way to think about not what can you cut out, but what can you make better choices in, and that may well help as well. But yeah.
Great, thank you. Very helpful. I guess I think there's lots these days about ultra processed food and those sort of things, which is just junk calories, but with not much nutritional value. And I think you're absolutely right that cutting, like a pack of crisps, which is 700 calories would be very helpful.
Yeah, take that out. Put fruit and veg in, and make better choices. Yeah, and just be very, very cautious. And sometimes I wouldn't try and lose the weight in a less intense part of your season. So maybe in the spring, where you're not doing high intense sessions, you don't need this. If you're trying to lose weight and do the intense stuff at the same time, there's much more stress, I guess, going onto the system. So if we can do it in a phase where it's not so intense, that's great. And then when in an intense phase, you may find you lose weight anyway, and you need to just keep an eye on it because you're putting a lot of load on the system.
Okay, great. Thank you. Very helpful. Thank you both.
Well, I suppose if people have got questions, have to contact us. Obviously, just ask us at sessions or just forward us a message. We're more than happy to help. So if anything does pop up, just let us know. But yeah, thank you, everybody.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Joe and Tom. Thank you.
And I suppose Tom's going to lead a session next week, just looking at how to plan your training.
Yeah, we're going to look at
which would be interesting.
Some general principles of training. It's a very similar thing. We'll do an overview of training in general. I'm basically going to give a 20-minute version of my recent course I did a couple of years ago. So you can save yourself 450 quid by coming to my TED Talk. And then we'll do a very similar format as we've done today with Joe's excellent presentation. And so basic principles of training, how to look at a training plan, what should you possibly be doing and what to put into it. And then I'll answer the questions that you've also, a lot of people have excellently asked already. That'll be this time next week. So 7:00 Wednesday next week.
Fab. Okay, well, thanks everybody.